Solomon finished the temple. It was beautiful and magnificent. The temple was a testament to God's greatness. It was a place where God would meet with his people. Solomon had poured his heart and soul into building this temple. He used the finest materials. He employed the most skilled craftsmen. This was a labor of love. The temple was a symbol of God's presence among his people. It was a place of worship, sacrifice, and prayer. God's glory would dwell in this place. The elders of Israel gathered in Jerusalem. All the Israelites were there, from Dan to Beersheba. It was a time of great joy and celebration. The nation was united in its love for God. They came together to dedicate the temple. This was a special moment in their history. God had chosen them to be his people. They were excited to see the temple. They were grateful to God for his faithfulness. Together, they would worship him. The priests brought the Ark of the Covenant to the temple. The Ark represented God's presence. It was a sacred and holy object. They carried the Ark with great care and reverence. Inside the Ark were the 10 Commandments. These were God's laws for his people. The people followed the Ark, singing songs of praise. They were filled with awe and wonder. God was with them. Solomon offered sacrifices to God. He offered thousands of animals. The people also brought their sacrifices. They gave their best to God. The sacrifices showed their gratitude for his blessings. They also showed their commitment to follow him. The aroma of the sacrifices filled the air. This was a time of atonement for their sins. God forgave them and made them clean. They were ready to enter into his presence. Section 5. The Holy of Holies, God's dwelling place. The priest placed the ark in the most holy place. This was the most sacred part of the temple. Only the high priest could enter this room. The Holy of Holies represented God's presence on earth. It was a place of awe and reverence. God would meet with his people there. 2 golden cherubim were on top of the ark. They spread their wings over the ark. This showed God's protection over his people. Section 6. Treasures of the Covenant, symbols of God's faithfulness. The Ark of the Covenant is one of the most significant symbols in the history of the Israelites. It was a sacred chest that held the most precious items of their faith, representing God's presence and his promises to his people. Inside the Ark were the 10 Commandments. These stone tablets were inscribed with the laws that God himself had given to Moses on Mount Sinai. They were not just rules, but a divine covenant. A set of guidelines that would shape the moral and spiritual life of the Israelites. These were the words that God had written with his own hand. The inscriptions were a direct communication from the divine, a tangible connection between God and his people. Each commandment was a testament to God's desire for a holy and just society. They were a reminder of God's covenant with his people. The commandments served as a constant reminder of the agreement between God and the Israelites, a promise that if they followed his laws, they would be his chosen people, blessed and protected. There was also a jar of manna in the ark. This manna was the miraculous food that God provided for the Israelites during their 40 years in the wilderness. It was a symbol of God's provision and care, ensuring that his people never went hungry even in the most desolate places. This was the bread that God had provided for the Israelites in the wilderness. Every morning, the Israelites would find this heavenly bread on the ground, a daily miracle that sustained them throughout their journey to the promised land. It was a reminder of God's provision. The jar of manna in the ark was a lasting testament to God's ability to provide for his people, no matter the circumstances. It was a symbol of his unwavering care and sustenance. Finally, there was Aaron's rod that had budded. This rod was a powerful symbol of God's chosen leadership. When the Israelites questioned Aaron's authority, God caused his rod to miraculously bud, blossom, and produce almonds overnight. This was a reminder of God's power and authority. Aaron's rod was a clear sign that God had chosen him and his descendants to serve as priests. It was a symbol of divine selection and the miraculous power that affirmed God's choices. God was faithful to his promises. Each item within the Ark of the Covenant was a powerful reminder of God's faithfulness, his provision, and his authority. These symbols served to strengthen the faith of the Israelites, reminding them of the divine presence that guided and protected them throughout their history. Section 7. Set apart for service, the consecration of the priests. This section delves into the sacred rituals and ceremonies that were performed to consecrate the priests, setting them apart for their divine duties in the temple. The consecration process was a deeply spiritual and significant event, marking the beginning of a priest's lifelong service to God and the community. The priests were consecrated to serve in the temple. This consecration involved a series of elaborate rituals, each with its own profound meaning and purpose. These rituals were designed to purify the priests, making them worthy of their sacred duties. The process included washing, anointing with oil, and the offering of sacrifices, all performed in a highly ceremonial manner. They wore special clothes and performed special rituals. The garments worn by the priests were not just ordinary clothes. They were intricately designed and held great symbolic significance. Each piece of clothing, from the ephod to the breastplate, was crafted with precision and care, representing various aspects of their spiritual responsibilities. These garments set the priests apart, visually distinguishing them as holy servants of God. They were set apart for God's service. This separation was not just physical, but also spiritual. The priests were chosen from among the people to serve as intermediaries between God and the community. Their lives were dedicated to maintaining the sanctity of the temple and ensuring that the worship practices were carried out according to divine instructions. The priests were mediators between God and the people. This role was crucial as they acted as the bridge connecting the divine with the earthly. They communicated the will of God to the people and brought the people's prayers and sacrifices before God. This mediating role required them to be pure and holy, as they were the representatives of the divine on earth. They offered sacrifices and prayers on behalf of the people. The act of offering sacrifices was central to their duties. These sacrifices were not just rituals, but were seen as essential acts of atonement and worship. The priests performed these sacrifices with great reverence, understanding the gravity of their actions and the spiritual implications for the community. Their role was very important. The priests held a position of great respect and authority within the community. They were seen as the guardians of spiritual purity and the keepers of divine knowledge. Their actions and decisions had a profound impact on the religious life of the people, guiding them in their faith and practices. The priests were responsible for keeping the temple pure and holy. This involved not only performing rituals, but also maintaining the physical cleanliness and sanctity of the temple. They ensured that the sacred spaces were kept in perfect condition, free from any impurities that could defile the holy place. This meticulous care was a reflection of their dedication to their divine duties. They were to teach the people about God's law. Education was a key aspect of their role. The priests were responsible for instructing the community in the laws and commandments given by God. They taught the people how to live righteous lives, guided by divine principles. This educational role was vital in ensuring that the community remained faithful and obedient to God's will. They were to lead the people in worship. Leading worship was one of the most visible aspects of their duties. The priests guided the congregation in prayers, hymns, and other forms of worship, creating a communal experience of reverence and devotion. Their leadership in worship helped to foster a strong sense of spiritual unity and connection among the people. Section 8. Heavenly Harmony, the Levites' Song of Praise. The Levites played music and sang praises to God. They played trumpets, cymbals, and lyres. The music was beautiful and uplifting. The music filled the temple with joy and celebration. The people were moved by the music. They lifted their voices in praise to God. The music reminded them of God's goodness and mercy. It reminded them of His power and majesty. It filled their hearts with hope and peace. Section 9. The Cloud of Glory. God's presence fills the temple. Solomon's temple, a magnificent structure built to honor the Lord, stood as a testament to the devotion and faith of the people of Israel. It was a place where heaven and earth seemed to meet, a sacred space where the divine presence was palpable. The temple was filled with the cloud of God's glory. This cloud, often referred to as the Shekinah glory, was a physical manifestation of God's presence. It was not just a mist or fog, but a tangible sign that the Almighty was in their midst. The air was thick with holiness, and the atmosphere was charged with divine energy. The cloud was so thick that the priests could not stand to minister. These priests, who were accustomed to performing their sacred duties, found themselves overwhelmed by the sheer weight of God's presence. They were unable to continue their rituals as the glory of the Lord filled every corner of the temple, leaving them in awe and reverence. It was a visible sign of God's presence. This was not an ordinary event. It was a divine encounter that left an indelible mark on all who witnessed it. The cloud served as a powerful reminder that God was not distant or detached, but intimately involved in the lives of his people. The people were amazed by the cloud. They had heard stories of God's glory filling the tabernacle in the wilderness, but to see it with their own eyes was an experience beyond words. The sight of the cloud left them speechless, their hearts filled with wonder and awe. They knew that God was with them. This realization brought a profound sense of peace and assurance. In a world filled with uncertainty and turmoil, the presence of God in the temple was a beacon of hope and stability. It was a clear sign that the Lord had not abandoned them, but was actively working in their midst. They fell to their faces and worshipped him. In the presence of such overwhelming glory, there was only one appropriate response: worship. The people bowed down, their faces to the ground, in a gesture of deep reverence and submission. They offered their praises and thanksgiving to the Lord, acknowledging his greatness and majesty. This was a special moment in their history. It was a time when the divine intersected with the human, when the eternal touched the temporal. This event would be remembered for generations, a testament to the faithfulness of God and the devotion of his people. God had come to dwell among his people. This was the fulfillment of his promise, a tangible expression of his love and commitment. The temple was not just a building, it was a dwelling place for the Almighty, a sacred space where heaven and earth converged. The temple was truly his house. It stood as a symbol of God's presence and power, a place where his glory was revealed and his name was honored. For the people of Israel, the temple was a constant reminder of their covenant relationship with the Lord, a place where they could encounter the divine and experience his grace and mercy.